How did you get started in entrepreneurship?
Well, I think that I was fortunate, and I'll be as brief, as quick as possible. So I found myself in Arizona, and I was out here racing bicycles. Ended up being a partner with a guy who's now a lender here in town, and we owned a bike shop. And then as my life started to grow older, I needed a little bit more income, found my way into property management. Property management I excelled at. I started managing large apartment communities throughout the Southwest, from Denver to Dallas to Phoenix. Then once my marriage started to develop more, we had one child, and I was traveling 3 weeks out of the month, and then we decided to have a second child, and happy wife, happy life. So no more traveling 3 weeks out of the month. I started looking at the opportunities of what was really lacking here in the Valley, and every time I would talk to somebody that I'd say I was a property manager, they'd think, oh, I was managing houses, because they just didn't have anybody that could manage houses for them. It was then that I realized that I felt that the property management that was here in 2000, 2001 was nothing like what we have now. It was really realtors who dabbled in property management. There were one, maybe three large companies here in town. The rest were real estate companies that did property management, but not property management that did real estate. I bought a portfolio of homes. I bought 140 files, as they're called. 2001, I purchased it. And then by 2004, we had over 1,000 single-family homes, and we had about 300 multifamily units. Mm-hmm. And we were cruising. It was a tough time to start a company, so I bought those files, left a very secure corporate job in February of 2001, and the strategy was just load up on $1,500 a month rentals, 10%, and just do a massive amount, of which I spent very strategically all the next 6 months doing. Woke up September 11th, and nobody decided to rent anything over $1,000 again. And it was years before rents climbed back up and over that. During that time, we still were able to massively impact the market by being obsessive about it. And other property management companies were waiting for business to come to them, whereas I was out and I was pounding the phones, and I was identifying specific owners here in town that had large portfolios of homes, that had their product spread out between 2 or 3 different real estate agents who were managing properties, not property managers, and just started collecting them. And then it became a self-fulfilling prophecy, where next thing you know, you've got 1,000 single-family homes, and Section 8's calling you to tell them what they should raise their rents to, right? Because you're managing so many in a certain area. That ran till about 2004, and we had a lot of personal investments in homes. Then decided that property management was definitely a lot of brain damage. While there's opportunity there wasn't software like what we have now. And, I had a staff of over 20 people, whereas now, for that same amount of units, I could do it with half, probably even a third.
Yeah, if you think, it's crazy to think about, but YouTube didn't exist, Facebook didn't exist, and we're talking 2004.
Yeah.
I look at when I got in this business, I'm like, I didn't even have an email address right before I got into real estate in 2005. So you look at what technology's done.
There weren't iPods, right? Let alone iPhones. And so, I had to have 3 receptionists. I had 2 receptionists, and then I had 1 backup. Voicemail was sketchy as it was, but, we had to answer the phones, and property managers and leasing agents. So, it was a big infrastructure. And so we scaled way back, and then I started looking at other opportunities, and in 2004, I just started selling to investors. That was the market, that was the opportunity, and we'd really done well. And when I broke up that company, I broke it up into thirds, and I sold off a third of the portfolio, and then 2 other property managers that worked for me took the other 2, and then I would just vend off a lot of my stuff to one of them, and then I still kept a small portfolio. When 2006 rolled around, we were selling packages of 5 homes to investors, and it was July of 2006. Realized my deals didn't close, and couldn't figure out why. And so I called the lender. He's like, "Well, we couldn't sell the loans off." And I'm like, "I don't understand. This is our business model. People can get approved for 5 homes. We sell them 5 homes." When I started digging a little bit deeper is when I realized that there was a problem in the secondary market. So there was no way to find, when a lender does your loan, he doesn't hold on to it, he sells it off. And I found an article in August of 2006, HSBC had reevaluated their bad debt from from 8 billion to 12 billion. Now this is a 200-year-old bank that does not make billion-dollar mistakes, let alone that big of a $1 billion.
Yeah.
So then became a new obsession of trying to figure out why the market was going to do that. So this is 2006. This is before anybody had a problem. And then I realized I could see all of these portfolios, so I started calling the lenders here in town. Spectrum was a lender here. So I talked to their guys. I was like, hey, who do you sell all of your loans to? Your bad loans, your medium, and your good. And then I started calling those people and saying, hey, who handles your disposition of bad assets, bad loans? And they're like, where are you? And I'm like, Phoenix. They're like, we haven't had a foreclosure in years. I'm like, great. Can you keep my name?
You knew it was coming.
I knew it was coming. And so really this is a true story, and this is about tenacity and about not stopping. I called HSBC, and I called I don't know how many random numbers, because once you figure out the prefix, then it's just different extensions. And I just kept calling and saying, hey, are you guys, who's in the REO department? Who's in the RE department? No luck, no luck. Finally talked to one lady, and I never remember her name. But I was like, are you in the REO department, handle bad debt? And she's like, no. And I was getting frustrated because it was right at that breaking point where, okay, maybe 1,000 phone calls aren't going to matter in my life. And I was like, do you smoke? And she's like, yes. And this is a true story. I was like, will you do me a favor? Will you write my name on a Post-it? And every time you go down, just keep it on the back of your pack of cigarettes. When you go downstairs, ask everybody that's down there smoking. True story. A couple weeks go by, and a guy by the name of Danny Gomez in the REO department at HSBC called me. And he's kind of laughing. He's just like, is this Scott Gibson? I'm like, yeah. He's like, so the guy in the cubicle next to me handed me your Post-it. He's like, apparently you're looking to do REOs in Phoenix? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, do you have any? And he's like, no, we haven't had any in I don't know how long. I mean, we get them every now and then, but not a lot. I was like, dude, just put my Post-it on your cubicle wall, because I really think that you're going to have a few more. So that was December of 2006, right at the end of the year. January 7th, January 8th, the guy calls me. He's like, no kidding, I just got 3. He's like, you want them? And I'm like, yeah. And I was here with a broker in town. Loved that broker. I loved the brokerage. And he's like, I'll send you the contracts. He's like, here, you got to go to this website. Talk about somebody who really appreciated the fact that somebody had him a Post-it, because he walked me through on getting registered for the website, walked me through what to write in my profile, so then that way he could approve me. And this guy really, and Danny, I saw him every year at conferences for like 4 or 5 years, and that guy never had to pay for dinner or drink as long as I knew him. And it started the roll, right? And I didn't want just one bank, I wanted all the banks, because all the people that I had been calling started calling me back. And I knew who I was talking to, and I knew what to say, and I knew. And because the skills that took for REO, you didn't have to be a good realtor. You had to be a good property manager. That's really what it came down to. Could you bill? Did you have the systems in place to make sure you're constantly evaluating what's going on? And that took off. Next thing I know, Freddie Mac called me. I'd written an article, it got published, and Freddie Mac called me, and they're like, we'd like to set up an interview. And talk about almost being a little naive. And I knew, at the time, Fidelity had a big disposition, and they're no longer there. But it was, if you could get Wells, Freddie, and Fidelity, that was the trifecta, right? And it changed a little bit. But I had picked up Fidelity, then I picked up Wells, and then Freddie Mac called, and they're like, hey, we really want to set up an interview with you next week. I'm like, I don't have time next week, but you've got me on the phone now, let's talk. And it was I wasn't even trying to be flippant or arrogant. I was really that busy, and I didn't realize quite who I was talking to at the end of the phone. And thankfully, she kind of laughed, and I was like, well, how'd you get my number? She said, well, I just got done reading your article. And I'm like, well, if you read my article, then you know I'm the best that you can find right now, right? She's like, right. I'm like, so let's just get moving. Freddie Mac we had for 5 years. It was a fantastic relationship. It was $1 million account. I found a fantastic partner who's an immensely successful agent here in town, George. And he and we just crushed it,
To give our listeners an idea of how much volume you guys were doing, dude, because it's insane, right? Because I think at one point you were like number 2 in the world for Remax, or you were way up there. What was your top year?
986 homes. And it crushed me that we didn't do 1,000, right? So we had a standing goal, 100 million, standing goal, 1,000 transactions. We sold from 2007 to 2013, we sold $250 million worth of real estate here in town. And that's with an average price of $96,000 a door. There's a lot of $100 million guys here in town now, but their average price is $1 million too. It's a different volume, but that speaks back to, we kept our ears open. Just like you, I had a guy at the RE/MAX conference, Waller, from Dallas. I can't remember his first name, but I was talking to a lady, told her I was into REO and it's my first year, and she's like, oh, well, you should talk to Jordan Waller, Christian Waller, one of them. And she's like, here, and little lady, she walks me over, and he stands up right away, sees her. She says, you need to help him with his REO, and then leaves me there. And the guy is just like, well, tell me what you got. And I told him, and his eyes got kind of big. He's like, okay. He's like, what's your email? And I got him an email. He's like, he calls his assistant, and he says, send over the following documents, right? And I was like, what's all that? And he's just like, let's have lunch tomorrow. We were at a conference. He's like, if you have a printer, print that stuff off. Let's have lunch tomorrow. So we sat down for lunch, and it was literally a business plan. It was a flow chart of responsibilities and tasks. And then I realized, I thought I was smart right up until I realized that I'm not. And it was a very humbling and very gracious experience because, I was doing well out of the gate, but not like that. I'd never seen quite that much involvement. And I'd seen it on the marketing side, but not necessarily on the operational side. And that changed everything for me. And that's how we were able to, I went to Africa for 3 weeks, and it was our best month. We closed 96 transactions. The staff hired 2 people. They didn't even know who I was when I walked back into the office. It was a new receptionist. She's like, hi, can I help you? I'm like, yeah, I work here.
Yeah. But I mean, it definitely took some blood, sweat, and tears to build it to that point.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? So
a lot of all-nighters. A lot of all-nighters.
And I remember you telling me that story, like, dude, I got my business partner. He works this 12-hour block. I work this 12-hour block. So literally our office, the phones and the computers are never unanswered 24 hours a day. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They lived in our guest house. Yeah. George and Jen Lawton here in town, they lived in the guest house, and God bless them for everything. They did so amazing. So. Yeah.